So basically, there are two main aspects that I will cover today. The first one is more on the general theory, the general theory on what is case study is all about. Okay, so basically, this is the boring part, lah. Okay, because it's mostly on the theory. So what I would like to highlight most is on the second part, which is on practical application. So on the how and why you use case study. So basically, in on part two, I will demonstrate how I actually use case study in my previous research. Okay, so why I'm going to focus more on part two, because at this stage, at postgrad stage, our learning is basically on andragogy level. Yeah, it's adult learning. So I believe you all can find yourself more, and you can read yourself on case study. So so that's why it's important for you to understand the how and why rather than the what of case study. Okay, so part one is basically on general theory on case study. Yeah. So basically, it is going to cover on what case study is all about. Yeah. So basically, it is for me it's the boring part lah, because it's mostly about theories. Yeah. Theoretical aspects. So on part two, we will cover on how to apply and how to use case study. So we will start with the definition of case study, okay, by Robert Yin, okay. So as you can see, case study research method is defined as an empirical inquiry that investigates a contemporary phenomenon within its real-life context, when the boundaries between phenomenon and context are not clearly evident, and in which multiple sources of evidence are used. Okay, as you guys can see, I highlighted all the important keywords in this definition. So because the highlighted parts will help you to understand what is the essential aspect, the G's of case study. Okay. Empirical inquiry, yeah. What do you understand by empirical inquiry? It's about studying a real life subject, yeah. And then a contemporary phenomenon, meaning it's time bound, it's happening, it is now. Okay. Real life context, real stuff. Boundaries between phenomenon and context are not clearly evident, because case study is explorative in nature. You explore things that is not have been explored before. Okay. The topic that is lacking in terms of prior studies. And of course, in case study, you use multiple sources of evidence, meaning there are different kinds of data sources and methods that you will use. Okay, so we move on. Okay, so in this slide, I'm going to touch on the basic concept. Okay, before we move into a more complex aspects of case study, I think it's very important for all of you to understand what is the basic concept. Yeah, roughly, at least you can understand what is the difference between case study and sampling, statistical method, and so on. So as you all know, normally we associate methods such as experiments, questionnaires, and survey with quantitative study. But case study is associated with qualitative, right? So I think it's important for you to understand um, what is the difference, okay? Because some students tend to confuse sampling and case study. So the figures, the white figures here, uh, can help you to understand what and differentiate case study with sampling. Okay. So you can see on the figure, the top figure, with white color. Okay. So it shows sense population and sample. Population and sample. I think some of you are doing quantitative. You are very familiar with this. Okay. So in quantitative study, when you survey people, you use certain sampling technique to get the sample, right? The sample is representative of the population. So because the quantitative analysis observe patterns in data at macro level, whereas for case study, we focus on data at the micro level. So for example, imagine if the study is about survey on the levels of understanding of Bahasa Malaysia language among HBP international postgrad students. So the population will be the entire international postgrad students in HBP, right? So the sample, in order to get a sample, we need to employ a certain sampling techniques to get the representative from the entire postgrad.
多岁了？
Okay,
Aduh, itu semuanya.
sorry, I think there is a disruption. Maybe can you just mute your audio, your voice? Okay, so back to the slides. Okay, for the survey, if let's say we want to understand the levels of understanding of Bahasa Malaysia among HBP international postgrad students, imagine you do a sampling. Okay, maybe you are just focusing on HBP postgrad student in our class right now. So that is how you sample. This is convenient sampling. Maybe in order to understand the levels of understanding of Bahasa Malaysia among HBP international postgrad students, maybe we just survey those who attend our current session. Okay, so that is a form of sampling. And then the result is a representative for the entire population. But in case study, we basically just select a few students. Okay, for example, we just select those who failed. Okay, those who failed Bahasa Malaysia exam twice. Okay, because we want to understand further how do that person study Bahasa Malaysia. Why maybe he or she is not interested in Bahasa Malaysia. We want to understand why he or she is not interested, and then we also want to explore how he or she can excel and success in the upcoming BM exam. So this is an example, a rough example on case study method. Of course, in case study, we focus on fewer cases compared to sampling, but we go deep, we go intensive on the data exploration. And then, but then one thing we should take note is the result is not meant for generalization. Okay, in survey, quantitative survey, we can use the result to generalize. Okay, but for case study research, we just want, our purpose of research is just to understand a particular context or phenomenon. Okay, so it doesn't, it is not proposed to generalize for all contexts. Okay, here are some important aspects on case study. I call this fun facts. Okay, case study is known as a controversial approach for data collection. Okay, it is known as a controversial approach because of its selectivity. Okay, selective nature. Okay, because sometimes a researcher will tend to be biased because the researcher will just select a particular case, but ignore the other cases. So that's why it is regarded as controversial. Okay, and case study is used in many areas and disciplines. It is recognized as a tool in many social science studies, such as education, sociology, community-based problems, and etc. And it's also used in government research, government projects, because we want to know the program and projects held at the government level. So case study allow researchers to go beyond the limited quantitative statistical results, because in statistical research, we just want to get the main idea. Okay, basically it's about getting the main idea. Maybe something like level of understanding, level of satisfaction, those kind of things. But in case study, we want to go deep, we want to go further. We want to understand the in-depth explanation why a certain group is satisfied or not satisfied. Okay, hold on. Okay, and then we want to understand why certain group is happy or not happy. So we basically want to explore on the how and why question. So that's why we use case study method. Okay, so case study enable researchers to explore and understand complex issues, as I mentioned earlier. It is a process or record of research in which detailed consideration is given to the development of a particular person, group, or situation over a period of time. Yeah, take note on the word situation over a period of time. So basically, in case study, remember we are researching something that is contemporary, something that is happening. Okay. For example, you want to study how a football team, yeah, for example, let's say Manchester United as your case. We want to study how they prepare and train for Champions League tournament. So you conduct the case study during this period of time, from before they enter the competition until they finish. And case study is a particular instance of something used or analyzed in order to illustrate a thesis or principle. Okay, case study is used basically for two things: to build a theory or to test a theory. Okay, so I will explain further this later on. Case study helps explain both process and outcome of a phenomenon under investigation by leveraging both quantitative and qualitative data. So in case study, you can actually leverage on both data collection methods. Okay, it can be qualitative and quantitative because you want the data to be rich. It's very important to get the richness of data to understand the how and why of something. Okay, for example, let's say you want to know about the perception of um, students in a class, okay, on the temperature level. Okay, what you can do is first you can survey, you can ask them, right? Interview, you can just ask them how they feel. You can survey them. They are feeling hot or cold or something like that. Okay, uh, this is basically more on qualitative because you want to know their perception. Okay, and then what you can do for quantitative is you can use thermometer, right? Thermometer to check the reading of a temperature in that room. So you triangulate these two data and you get a very rich data for your findings. Okay, and a case study is an investigation of a predefined phenomena that does not involve explicit control or manipulation of variables. Because the purpose of case study is to help you to understand a particular context or phenomena in detail, in-depth understanding. Okay, so you are not doing something like lab work, lab research that you control, or you have certain variables that you can manipulate to get the data or to test the relationship. Okay, so in case study, we want to understand, we want to explore, and we want to understand something in detail. So, okay, are you guys following so far? So far, so good, or am I going too fast?
Maybe fast, doctor.
Oh, really?
Sometimes.
It's quite okay, okay,
Yes, it
okay,
is
okay. Yeah,
definitely.
this is my weakness.
Okay.
This is my nature.
It is okay for me. It is okay, doctor. Don't worry. But sometimes maybe fast.
Okay, so I'll
Okay.
try my best to slow down. Okay,
It
because
is like India when India people
okay,
speaking.
because there is a I set the WebEx for like 1 and
Okay.
30 minutes. So just now
Okay.
the notification
Okay.
appears. So I'm
Okay.
quite
Okay.
nervous if
Understand.
suddenly
Okay,
if
doctor.
okay.
Don't worry. Don't worry. Okay.
Okay. All right. So by now I hope that you have some understanding on the basic concept of case study. Okay. How case study is different from sampling. Okay. So let's understand what is a case. Okay. What is a case? What do we mean by the a case? Okay. So first, case can be any organization. Okay. Okay. So I include hypothetical question. Okay. Hypothetical question to help you understand how this case study can be conducted. For example, for organization, yeah, as a case, The question can be something like this: how global furniture companies select the location for their stores. So in this question, you want to know how these companies select their location. Okay. For example, you can explore on the decision making process of IKEA and Muji. So in this case, IKEA and Muji are the case. Okay, for under organization. Okay, this is the first type of case. Okay, the second one. A case can be any process. Okay, process. For example, the question goes like this: how conversions of historic mansion to boutique hotel in the context of UNESCO World Heritage Sites of Malaysia were made? So the question is probing on how we can understand the process to convert adaptive reuse, yeah, from a building that is originally a historic mansion, and then how designers change this building to a museum. So your case is basically on you want to scrutinize the process that the consultant or designers made in order to switch this historic mansion into a boutique hotel. Okay, so this is the second type of case process. Okay. The third one, okay, a case can be any person. Okay, for example, we want to understand, okay, this is a hypothetical question, how the KonMari method brings joy at home. Okay, I hope you all know this figure. She is Marie Kondo, a professional organizer, famous in Japan, and recently she appeared in Netflix. Okay, and also famous in America. Okay, so in this case, we can use Marie Kondo as a case to gauge in-depth understanding on her philosophy about decluttering and organizing residential space. Okay, so this is an example of how a person can be your case study. Okay, so the next one, a case can be any technology. Okay, for example, this is the hypothetical question: why museums in developed countries are more advanced and futuristic? Okay, so you want to find answer for this question. So of course you need to explore. Okay, so basically you can explore the impacts of this technology. For example, virtual reality, the Internet of Things, augmented reality, the application of this technology in their museum exhibitions and interpretation design. So in this context, these technologies are the case for your research. Okay, so we move on to the next one. A case can be any product. For example, the question goes like this: how Apple applies the concept of minimalism in their product branding. So what you can do is you can analyze the packaging design and the user interface of Apple's latest smartphone model, maybe iPhone 13 Pro Max. Okay, so in this case, the product is your case study because you want to understand you want to in detail about how they apply minimalism philosophy in their product branding. And of course, building, yeah, a case can be building, which is very common for you all because we are in the built environment field. I believe most of you are focusing on building. Okay, so a hypothetical question, yeah, why physically disabled travelers prefer KLIA Airport for their transit stop? Okay, so this is a hypothetical question. So in order to understand this question, you can do post-occupancy evaluation on the universal design features in KLIA Airport building. Okay, so in this case, the building is your case study. All right. So to summarize the type of case, it can be any organization, it can be any process, it can be any person, any technology, any product, any building, and etc. It depends on your context that you want to explore. Yeah, your research questions and also your objectives. Okay, so we move on to the category of case study. Okay, the category of case study. So this is according to Robert Yin. Okay, Robert Yin is one of the gurus, gurus in research methodology for case study. So there are three category of case study. The first one is exploratory, descriptive, and explanatory. So I hope my slide will help you to understand, because I summarize everything. I make it compact to help you understand the general idea about all of this. So exploratory is basically a research that is conducted to become familiar with the basic facts, settings, and concerns of something. Okay. For example, if you want to study a footballer's mindfulness state during matches, so an exploratory question can be like something like, does Cristiano Ronaldo use any mindfulness technique when he plays football? If so, how often? Yeah, take note. Yeah, the question is not that in depth. Yeah, we just want to know whether this athlete use or not the mindfulness technique. Okay, and then we go to number 2, descriptive. Okay, descriptive is to provide a detailed, highly accurate picture of something. We just describe the thing without speculating. Yeah, we don't make any conjecture assumptions. Okay, so for example, back to our topic, example topic. Okay, so after you understand about whether Cristiano Ronaldo use a mindfulness technique in while he plays football, so we want to know what mindfulness technique he used and how he uses it. So this is an example of descriptive questions, to understand further about this topic, a footballer's mindfulness state during matches. And then the third one is explanatory. Okay, it basically is about testing a theory's predictions of principle. We want to explain the why things happen. We want to understand about the why of something. In short, it's about the why of something. So the question is like, why he uses, let's say he used mindful breathing technique. Okay, let's say we assume Cristiano Ronaldo used mindful breathing while he plays football. So we want to understand why he used this technique when he plays football. So we want to understand the cause. Okay, so these are the three types of category of case study. Okay. Okay, we move on to single or multiple cases. Okay, in case study, this is like a common topic, common debate, whether to use single case or to use multiple case. So it all boils down to whether you boils down to your research context. Okay, every case study should serve a specific purpose within the overall scope of an inquiry, because you are having case study due to your purpose. Okay, you want to understand something in detail, and it depends. Okay, it depends on your context. So that context will determine whether you have a single case or a multiple case. Okay, a single case strategy is used when multiple cases cannot satisfy the research needs. Okay, so typically when the cases are not that common, okay, it's rare, it's critical, and then you use single case. Okay, but if it's common, then you can have a few cases. Multiple cases should be considered as multiple experiment, not as multiple respondents in a survey. So take note that researchers use multiple cases to get more information, to shed light further on a particular topic. Okay, so it is not for the purpose of like what we do in statistic research. Okay, it's not for generalization, but it's rather to get a rich data on a particular topic or context. Okay. However, it is possible to achieve a generalization when the number of cases is increased. Yet, it is not similar to a statistical generalization. Okay, so I hope this explains, why single and why multiple. Okay. So let's us look on the 6 primary sources of evidence for case study research. Okay, basically in case study we get we acquire data from many sources, many evidence. Okay, it's very rare people just use one source of data. So these are the six sources, the common one. Yeah, the documentation, archival records, interviews, direct observation, participant observation, and physical artifacts. Okay, building is under physical artifacts. Okay. Okay, so that's basically on the what, yeah, on the what of a case study that I think important for you to understand and digest at this stage, because I assume you all are starting your research. So I think if you go too complicated, it will be futile. You will be confused. So I just covered on all the for me, it's the most important aspects that you need to understand for this stage. Okay, the general concept, the general idea of case study. However, these are, if you have time, you should, if you are doing case study, and or if you decide to use case study, I suggest you to read further on these topics. Yeah, 3 main steps on designing a case study. Okay, so I will demonstrate on these 3 main steps, but is later. But it's good if you can read further on this. It's also good for you to understand the advantages and disadvantages of a case study method. It will help you to read on how to analyze case study data and how to validate the case study results. And I think it's important for you to distinguish case study against narrative research, grounded theory, phenomenology, and ethnography. I know that you guys already learned this from Dr. Farazira lectures previously, but it's good if you can further understand what is the difference between all these research methods. Yeah. Okay, so on the left, you can see there are 3 images. Okay, on the top 2 are books that I would like to recommend for you to read. Okay, so the first book is on case study research in art and design, and the second one is a complete guide to academic research in built environment and engineering. So the second book is my favorite book. Yeah, it's produced by HBP lecturers, and I make it compulsory for my for students under my supervision to read and to digest this book entirely. So I hope you guys can find this book. Yeah, it is available online. Okay, and I will also upload all the case study notes, the relevant one, in eLearn later after I finish this lecture. Okay, so with that, we finished the part 1. Okay, the part 1 is the basic, the what case study is all about. Okay, so now we are moving to part 2 on the application of case study method in research. So basically, I will demonstrate how I use case study in my PhD research, okay, in 2018. So in part 2, we are going more practical. Yeah, more practical. It's not about theory anymore. It's more on the practical side. So I hope you all can really follow me, because please pay attention, because when I demonstrate, if you miss the earlier part, you will be confused with the later part. Okay, so try your best to focus. Okay. So okay, my PhD research is quite complicated if I want to explain everything. Okay, so in order to facilitate your understanding, in order to make you to help you understand my complicated research, this is the simple analogy. Okay, on what my research is all about. Okay, so my research back then is aimed to develop an evaluation framework. Okay, so can you guys see these images? Let's have an activity now. Okay, so this is like a brain teaser for you all. Okay, so for example, if let's say you want to produce an evaluation framework for a successful or for the quality of a man, what can you what are the things that we need to look into? What are the aspects? Can I get some input from the students? Let's say, okay, let's say you want to evaluate a man. Okay, whether the man is successful or not. Okay, what are the aspects? What are the parameters? What are the criteria that you will look into? Can you just throw some ideas here?
Education background,
Education. Okay, good. What else?
Accomplishments?
Accomplishment, education. Okay. What else?
Determination.
Determination. Okay. Any more? Sorry? It's not clear.
responsibility,
So sorry again?
responsibility,
Responsibility. Okay. All right. What else?
Peace.
Double voice. I can't hear properly.
Peace. Can I see peace?
Peace. What is that?
Yes.
What do you mean by peace?
Peace.
How do you spell that? Okay, I noticed some of
Respected by others.
Hostility.
Broad vision.
Hostility.
Okay. Okay,
Yes.
some of you type in the chat box, social status and so on. Okay, so basically what you guys are doing just now, the activity is we are framing. Okay, we are framing. We are throwing ideas. Okay, we are throwing ideas on. Imagine you want to develop an evaluation framework. So of course we need to know how are we going to evaluate a particular topic, a particular context. So you throw everything. So this is of course, to evaluate a quality or success of a man, we will look into the physical, maybe the mindset, the financial capacity of that man, the functionality, the helpfulness of that man, and so on. So what we are doing just now is frame. So this is similar to what I did for my PhD research. Okay, so let's look on my PhD research. Yeah.
Hey, okay.
Okay, here it is. Okay, I'm going to use my own example of designing research using case study. So basically my research back then is on post-conservation evaluation framework for adaptive reuse museums. I use Georgetown as my case study. Okay, so again, the research is about how I can develop and produce an evaluation framework to evaluate adaptive reuse museums. Adaptive reuse museums mean the building that is originally served different function, and then after some time they convert the building to a museum. So how am I going to evaluate this building, the impact of this building after the adaptive reuse process? So in short, after conservation, we want to see the impact, whether it's successful or not. So basically, it all my research boils down to these three stages. Okay, three phases. The first one is to frame. Okay, to frame the research. So as what we did just now, yeah, we just throw ideas, yeah. But in PhD research, of course, I frame it using literature review. Okay, using previous studies. So why I did that? Because I want to develop the conceptual PCE framework. So after framing, the second one is testing. Okay, to test the evaluation framework, and then after testing the evaluation framework, of course, I want to establish by validate and refine the evaluation framework. So in short, these are my research. So what important here is I want to show you on how I use case study. Maha Segar Ali, I think you need to mute
Sorry.
Yeah.
Yes, okay.
Okay. So a disclaimer here, research design for theory testing using case study differ from theory building case study research design, because Different research projects serve different purposes and follow different research path. Okay, again, I would like to clarify. In case study, you can use the case study method to build a theory or to test a theory. Okay, so in my research, it's more on the latter part, to test a theory. Okay, so let's look to the details. So in case study research method, okay, there are 3 steps. The first one is to define the research question and the research focus. So let me guide you through my process. Okay, I hope you all can follow through. So I started my research by explaining the background of my research. So I focus on Malacca and Georgetown as the UNESCO World Heritage Sites in Malaysia. So I mentioned that on 7 July 2008, these two states were recognized as a UNESCO World Heritage Site because of these 3 criteria. Okay, criterion 2, 3, and 4, because of the architecture, because of the multiple religion and races, and also because of the landscape, the unique location and history as a trading port. So because of these qualities, Malacca and Georgetown were recognized as a UNESCO World Heritage Site. And then I go further and explain that historic building is very important. Okay, it's an important component in Malacca and Georgetown because they form the outstanding universal value of Malacca and Georgetown. But the scenario is adaptive reuse is quite rampant. Okay, in Malacca and Georgetown, conservation heritage building owners, they tend to convert their building. Okay, let's say it was a shop house, and then they convert into boutique hotels. They convert into cafes. They convert into museum and so on. So this trend is actually emerging and become active. But is it appropriate or not? This is what I raised in my thesis. Yeah. So that's why I stated in my thesis I want to study the scope of adaptive reuse, the scope of conversion of a historic building from original function to a new function. Okay, and I mentioned that from all the trends available, the process of historic building converted to museum is the most trending. Okay, the most active. Okay, and then I further highlight the problem. Okay, the problem. So the problem is adaptive reuse implementations have not always led to positive post-conservation impacts on historic buildings, because despite they have converted the buildings, okay, suppose after conversion of after the building has been converted, it should be physically revived. Okay, before this, the building is old and dilapidated, so they restore, they adaptive reuse the building. So of course the building should be more physically intact. Okay, but then there are still buildings that are damaged, okay, dilapidated in the site, in Malacca and Georgetown. And there are cases where some of the buildings, after their conversion to museum, they turn to be how to say, inactive. Okay, nobody visit the building. The building tend to be underused. Okay, they underused, so meaning it's not functioning as a museum. They close the building most of the time. So these are the problem that I raised. Okay, so that's why I want to develop a post-conservation evaluation framework focusing on the case of adaptive reuse museum. Okay, why I want to do this? Because if you look on, I hope you can see my cursor here. Okay, this is the conservation framework in Malaysia, the common one. Okay, as you can see, there are 5 phases. Okay, starting from preliminary research until heritage management. So it stopped there. Okay, it stopped there. Okay, without any evaluation paradigm in that framework. So this shows that the process is linear. a good process is cyclical because you can always improve a program or project. So this conservation framework in Malaysia is linear because it stopped until heritage management. So I propose that we need some sort of evaluation, okay, to complement this existing framework. So that's why I want to develop. My aim is to establish an evaluation framework focusing on the post-conservation impacts of historic buildings converted to museums within the context of UNESCO World Heritage Sites of Malaysia. So in my study, there are three objectives. So the first objective, in short, is to frame, to review the relevant criteria for my evaluation framework. The second one is to evaluate the post-conservation impacts of adaptive reuse museums. And then the third one is to validate the evaluation framework. So I would like to raise that the second stage, okay, the second objective is where I use my case study. Okay, the second objective, RO2, as you can see, is the phase where I use case study. Okay, in short, first I develop the framework. So in order to, after I develop the framework, how can I test the framework? So I use case study. So I bring my framework and I test it at the case study, and then I validate the framework. So this is how I use case study to test a theory. Okay. Okay, so we move on to the second stage. Okay, once after I define my research question and research focus in case study, the second step is to design the instruments for data collection, right? So how I did this? Okay, here's the thing. Remember, in case study, you can use multiple data sources, right? It's not necessarily just qualitative. You can also include and embed quantitative methods in case study. So this is how I use multiple source of data to get what I want. Yeah. Okay. So basically, I use field observation. I also have a mini interview. I have a mini FGD. I do field measurement. I survey the museum operators, and then I also use Delphi method to validate my framework. Okay, so I'm not going to go to detail on this because I believe it will be complicated for you at this stage. So just to go through a glance on my example of research. Okay, the third step, selection of cases. Okay, remember the step one is to frame. Okay, frame the research. The second one, I test my evaluation framework. Okay, the third, and then the step three is selection of cases. How I select my case study. Okay. So basically, my case is on Georgetown. I'm focusing on Georgetown. Okay, Georgetown in Penang. Okay, as you know, in Georgetown there are lots of museums. Okay, there are many museums, but in order to select my case study, I narrowed down the scope into these three criteria. Okay, so I only focus on case of adaptive reuse museum within the conservation zone of Georgetown. Meaning in Georgetown, the conservation zone consists of core zone and buffer zone. So I only consider buildings that are located within these two zones. Yeah, and then I only consider museums that has been adaptive reuse. So if the museum is built originally, the original function is a museum, then I will ignore. Okay, so I will just focus the building that previously was something else and then converted to museum as my case. So the second criterion is adaptive reuse. And of course, the third one is accessibility. I only focus on the buildings that I can access and get my data. Okay, because if I'm not mistaken, there are about 14 adaptive reuse museums in conservation zone of Georgetown, but I can only access 5. So that's how I justify my selection of cases for my research. Okay, so at the end, I have 5 buildings as my case. Yeah, the first one is Penang State Museum, Sun Yat-sen Museum, Dark Mansion, Made in Penang Interactive Museum, and then Batik Painting Museum. All right. So now I know my case. Okay. So remember the first step, I try to develop the evaluation framework. Okay, and then I want to test the evaluation framework. So I use these 5 buildings to test my evaluation framework. Okay. So this is an example of how I test. Yeah, I collect data. For quantitative part, I use certain data loggers and tools. So I place the tools as indicated in these floor plans. Yeah. Okay, so after I test, so let's see the results. Yeah. Okay, we go through the results of my my research. So remember the activity we did just now on finding the criteria to evaluate a man, right? So basically, you guys throw ideas, the general ideas. So this is what I did, okay, to develop my conceptual evaluation framework. So it looks nice here, but don't be surprised. I took like almost 2 years to come up with this framework, this conceptual evaluation framework, from literature review. Okay, so I have to go through lots of literature sources, scrutinize this and that to come up with this framework. Basically, it's about connecting the dot. So this is the findings from my literature review. Okay, the framing stage on how I want to evaluate adaptive reuse museum. So after getting this framework, I bring this framework to the testing stage. Okay. So these are the examples of the results that I get from case study. Okay, remember previously I showed the conceptual evaluation framework, then I test this framework and I get results. So these are the results at the testing stage using case study. So from this stage, I get the information about physical appropriateness of the building, and then I get the result on the functional effectiveness, and then I get the result on the financial efficiency. So implying from this, okay, from the testing stage, meaning to say the theoretically derived conceptual PCE framework tested through case studies yield the evaluation results, indicating its operational and empirical capabilities. What I'm trying to say here is, this is the conceptual framework that I derive from literature review. Then I test this framework using case study, right? So these are the results that I get, okay, from case study. Okay, so for the criterion of physical appropriateness, these are the results. For functional effectiveness, these are the results. And then for financial efficiency, these are the results. So it's showing that the framework is feasible. Okay, it can be used to generate evaluation results. So I have proven that the framework can be used to evaluate adaptive reuse museums, because in the literature review stage, I developed the framework based on theory. So I bring the framework and test its practicality using case study. Okay, so after these 2 stages, I validate the framework. Okay, after I test the framework, and the final stage is I validate the framework. So I validate the framework based on content validity and phase validity. Again, I'm not going to explain much on this, because I'm just trying to demonstrate on the surface on how I use case study. Yeah. So after I develop the framework, the conceptual framework, I test the framework using case study, and then the final stage of my PhD research is I validate the framework. Okay, how I validate? Basically I engage conservation experts and stakeholders, okay, to validate the framework. So this is the final framework, my main contribution. Okay, as you can see, just a minor improvement made to the original framework, as indicated in this yellow box. Okay, so basically the expert suggested that I add on this item on the framework to make it complete and established. So that is my example from my own experience on using case study to test theory.